Hey, hello, everybody. Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for taking some time out of your busy day to join us for this webinar, where we are here at Sikich are partnering with our good friends and partners, Charted, on this webinar, really discussing the modern way to work with vendors in NetSuite. Before we kind of jump in, just kind of take care of a little housekeeping. I'll introduce myself quickly, then I'll pass it along to the folks at Charted. So my name is Jim Ingram. For those that don't know me, I am the sales director for our life science practice, focusing in ERP transformation. Been with Sikich for a little over 10 years. Been working here in the life sciences industry for the last 9. And look forward to passing. I'll pass along to Casey to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. And hi, everyone. I echo Jim's sentiment. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Casey Padgett. I'm a Senior Alliance Manager here at Charted. So I am responsible for supporting our partnership with Sikich and helping guide our joint clients in their AP automation journey. I've been in the NetSuite space for about 8 years. So a bit pretty familiar with some of the ins and outs of how the solution works, and excited to kind of talk us through the vendor onboarding piece. I'll mostly be helping moderate an MC today, but my colleague Marlon will be leading us in a product demonstration a bit later. So Marlon, I'll pass it over to you.
Marlon, I cannot hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marlon Boggs. I am going to be delivering on the demo today, showing a kind of a preview of our solution. We also have some new things I'm excited to be showing as part of vendor onboarding. I lead product management here for our payments and our vendor onboarding solution. I have about a decade of experience in financial services, a little bit newer to the NetSuite space specifically, since I joined here in Charted about 2 years ago. Really have learned a lot about NetSuite specifically, and have been, mainly focused on payments the last 5 years, and also have now since gotten some experience on the vendor onboarding side. So excited to be kind of showing some of our software here today.
Thank you both. So our agenda here today is really to kind of cover these 4 main things. Then we'll get into questions and answers. We definitely want to save time for us at the end here. And as I mentioned up front, obviously there is a little housekeeping. Are some things that we want to cover prior to kind of passing along to Marlon and getting into the demo. One of which is kind of talking a little bit about why we're here today, right? So I think for many of us know us as Sikich as a very strong NetSuite partner, specifically here in the life science space. But understanding kind of the unique needs of our clients, as well as some of the native NetSuite functionality that may not be a fit, really looking to work with our clients and give them best of breed solutions, especially in the AP automation space, really kind of helped us build a great partnership here with Charted. Many of us here on the Sikich side have known and worked with various members of the team over many years, so it just made a natural fit for us to really build a great partnership moving forward. Casey, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on that partnership as well.
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. We are grateful for the partnership. Appreciate some of the joint clients we have on this webinar as well that trust both Sikich and Charted to support you in your NetSuite journey. So we're excited to continue building upon that.
Great, thank you.
All right. And before we dive into the content today, we do have a couple of polling questions just to help make sure we're guiding the conversation into a place that makes sense for all of our attendees. So our first polling question is, how does your AP team collect banking details from new vendors today? So a few different options there for you. A, looking at emails. B, running phone calls. C, leveraging a separate vendor portal. Or D, leveraging NetSuite or your current ERP today. And we'll give you guys just a few moments to get your answers in. All right, looks like we've got mostly everybody, so thank you for getting those answers in quick. I believe you may be able to see the results, but if not, email was our leading answer. About 65 to 70% of you said that is how you're onboarding your new vendors today. So with that in mind, I do want to kind of shift into some of the hidden pain points behind vendor onboarding and how this can really start to accumulate and create AP friction. So before a single invoice really ever gets paid, obviously someone on your team is chasing down that new vendor detail. As we saw from the poll, that could look like you're emailing the vendor an Excel form, receiving their W-9, receiving whatever important documentation you need, and saving that somewhere. Maybe that is inside a NetSuite, maybe that's using OneDrive or a folder on your desktop. But we've come to see that when you're saving that information in different places, right, it's hard to find that months later, or it's hard to call back that information. And if your vendor has questions, there can be a lot of back and forth in this process. More often than not, they can often stop using a portal altogether. So if you are leveraging a vendor portal, depending upon the vendor, sometimes they may not be as willing to log in and kind of work with you on those, on using that solution. And really on any given day, none of this really feels like a crisis. This is just something you're handling in the moment, maybe a few emails back and forth with your vendor. But over time, that can create a pattern. And every vendor that you're bringing on can start with this manual, more error-prone handoff. And that's really the hidden pain point, is trying to get all of this information in with different vendors using different processes. It isn't one big failure necessarily. It's just small little issues along the way. And a messy front door doesn't stay contained at onboarding, right? We can see this later on go to affect the entire AP process. Before we do shift, Jim, I'd love to ask you, kind of as you've worked across different NetSuite clients, do you see this to be true today? I mean, how are most of them collecting new vendor information?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, it's going to be the same answer we just saw from the poll, right? So they are collecting that data kind of manually, right? So requesting it from their vendors, and when they get it, right, manually keying it into their ERP, right? So obviously, I think the desire is to automate that as much as possible, but for many of our clients, it's still a manual effort.
Yep, and I think we see the exact same thing on the Charted side when we're assisting clients kind of evaluating what the right vendor onboarding process looks like. So really appreciate that. Yeah. All right. And as I mentioned, this does eventually have a ripple effect. So vendor onboarding being the very first process of your accounts payable journey. As we continue to look across the entire process, this is where things start to really compound and slow down. So a missing tax form or an incomplete payment detail doesn't just sit quietly. It's going to stall the invoice tied to that vendor. Now your team's troubleshooting with support, requesting the same information over again, waiting on that information. And because vendor records feed straight into your close, that delay, of course, lands right on your month end. Now your close could possibly slip. Accruals are getting harder to trust. So what really started as that one problem, an incomplete vendor record, is now leading to a slower, more stressful close for the entire finance team. And I really like this slide because it's pretty chaotic. And I think that really is kind of the message here of that ripple effect from one minor hiccup at the onboarding process really does slow things down when you're starting to look at actually processing your invoices, processing your payments, and accruing for any of those expenses or those payments. And Jim, again, I'll ask you a question here. So for the clients who haven't solved the onboarding, do you also see that the pain shows up in the month end, or is it more drowning in follow-ups? What do you think on that side?
Yeah, I mean, the pain initially kind of shows up, and I think AP and procurement feel it first, right? But as you know, the largest business impact is definitely coming downstream, right? So AP feels it first, next, the controller feels it, and then at some point the CFO starts to see it with a lack of close efficiency, controls as well as scalability.
100%. And I appreciate you calling out the scalability. And as we kind of move into our next slide, that is one of the things that we do look at as far as what's at stake. So hopefully with the last two slides, like we've kind of agreed upon this issue and the problem, but the problem is only as important as what it goes on to affect. And so we've looked at really just 4 general areas that are at stake when you do leverage a more manual vendor setup process. First is your time. Of course, time is the most expensive resource that we can't always get back. So spending hours on back and forth emails and phone calls just to set up one vendor can lead and compound to a larger time suck later on. Of course, when you're manually entering in information, we've all been prone to fat finger something every now and then. We all make mistakes. So anything that could be a manual keying error is going to lead to problems down the road, whether it's incomplete payment details, missing tax forms, or just having to go back and re-enter that information and revalidate it. Third is delays. So this kind of ties in with the time suck of it all, but if your invoices are stuck waiting for vendor information or for further approvals, or just going back in to really clean up that information, this is going to cause you to experience delays in payment, delays in your month-end close. And like Jim said, this is something that can be felt across the team, whether it's procurement, it's your accounting team, your finance team. So those delays can really lead to some big issues. And then lastly, again, Jim pointed this out, but scale. So maybe right now you're not managing that many vendors. You think it's something you can certainly manage in a manual way. But as your organization scales, as you multiply, grow globally, grow across new regions, new product segments, this is something that is really going to slow your team down and really lead to a possible issue for your AP process. And I'd say the good news with this is it's all fixable. Fixing how your vendors get onboarded is the very first step of ensuring that you're not running into some of these high cost areas. And Jim, I know you did mention the scale, so maybe that may be the answer, but do you feel that any of these, captures the problem more accurately, or is it does it shift depending on the stage of the business?
Yeah, it's a good question because we work with life science organizations of all sizes and scales, right? Whether it's from startup all the way through fully commercial organizations. When it comes to the earlier stage, smaller ones, definitely time hurts the most, right? You get a smaller, leaner team. So when you're doing things manually, it takes them more time, takes their time away from honestly some more important things they need to be taken care of. As they begin to scale, that's when delays in that scalability become more visible. And then really when you become a multi-entity or certainly kind of becoming a global, it really inhibits the scalability of your organization, continuing to do these things manually. And then the one thing that kind of goes across all of it, if you're doing this manually, errors, right? Those errors are really gonna hurt regardless of what stage of an organization you're in.
Totally agreed. And we don't have it on this slide, but there's a really good study that NetSuite did a couple years back about generally the cost of staying manual. And one of the things associated with it is almost a 50x increase in time spent going up to clean up those errors. So that is definitely a big piece of the pie. All righty. Before I hand it over to Marlon to take us through a quick product demo, one more poll question for you all. So we've given you a little bit of a highlight of some of the bottlenecks, but from where you sit today, what's the biggest bottleneck in your current process? Is that chasing vendors down for those missing W-9s or banking info? Is it getting internal approvals, re-entering that data into NetSuite, tracking down documents, or more likely than not, it's probably a mix. It's probably all of the above. So I'll give everyone just a bit of time to get those answers in. not to spoil it, but it does appear so far that all of the above seems to be the broad answer for everybody.
Mm.
All right, looks like we're getting close to everybody. Thank you for participating in that poll again. And yeah, about 62% of you said all of the above. And a close second to that is chasing down that vendor information for missing W-9s and banking info. So a bit what we expected, and hopefully Marlon will take it away here, but he'll talk through kind of how that could look different, whether it's leveraging a solution like Charted or trying to help automate some of those processes. So Marlon, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Casey. All right, so I'm here to talk about, before I get into the demo, I just wanted to envision like what if vendor onboarding could be different than it is today. So before I do that though, I really want to step back and talk about like our solution. And when we were thinking about designing our vendor onboarding solution, when you look at the pain points that a lot of you all had, and we saw this in the poll as well, like a lot of it does come down to vendors' responsiveness. And really at the end of the day, like we want to make it as easy as possible for those vendors to submit their information to you in a way that is controlled, validated, and flows directly into NetSuite. So when we're thinking about our solution, those are some of the core components of what we're trying to do. So removing that friction as much as we can from the experience from the vendor to submit it was front and foremost of our solution. So, when we think about vendor onboarding, we're envisioning a world where that vendor management and that vendor input is seamless. So it's not a complicated process by which you're creating logins, you're having to go through a bunch of hoops to submit your information as a vendor. We've all been on that other side, whether that's been on the personal payment side. I can't tell you how many times where maybe you have a payment sitting on the other end and you have to go through a 5 to 10 minute onboarding process to do so. We want to avoid that as much as possible. Obviously, still security, information quality, that's still top of mind. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like removing friction for the vendors is really front and foremost of our vendor onboarding solution. The second thing here is specific to NetSuite too, right? But the highly customized approach that a lot of our customers take. Now, in the AP space, you're all working in different industries, different verticals, different types of businesses. You have different requirements. So having a customized approach where you can ask for fields that are required and specific to your business, and also not only ask for those fields, but pipe it directly into your NetSuite custom fields without having to change too much on your side or change anything on your side in order to make that happen. We really wanted to make sure that we work within the confines of NetSuite and we don't require you to do an additional kind of integration or custom field in order to feed that information in. So that's really front and foremost of our solution as well. And then lastly, it's just building a seamless experience, whether that comes to reviewing the fields that come back, making sure that everything aligns inside of NetSuite, so you're not having to do multiple syncs back and forth between a third-party database and NetSuite and waiting for that information to flow over. Really, keeping NetSuite as that source of truth was really front and foremost with vendor onboarding as well. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen here, giving a quick overview of our solution and just walking through a couple examples. Okay. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay. All right, so here is actually a sneak peek of our new upcoming Advanced Vendor Onboarding queue. So this is going to a series of early customers here pretty soon and to the broader customer base shortly thereafter. But I did want to give a sneak peek of this. I think it demonstrates really what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to actually quickly then pan over to our existing solution that that you may be more familiar with if you've used our software. If you haven't, this is what it looks like today. What we are doing is bringing it into our Suite app, bringing that bundle into the Suite app, and actually, using a more modern approach where you can show in high columns if you want to see things. If you don't need to see how many forms have been sent for that particular vendor, you can do so. But really, I think for this demo, I'm going to be showing some of this as well as tying that into the actual AVO and vendor experience itself. So let's start with a sample vendor here, Marlin's Macaroons. So this is a new vendor. It's just come into your NetSuite environment. We want to start and kick off that onboarding process. So to do so, you can do this in bulk. You can also do it individually. We're just going to go ahead and kick off onboarding. And you can see then that vendor moves to the next phase, which is ready to send form. So when it comes to form submissions, you can select any form that you create through our advanced form builder. So to just give a preview of what the form builder looks like. So it is highly customized. You can even put in like HTML styling inside of the email. You can use subsidiary restrictions. You can have any number of forms that your business needs. We do have customers that, for example, they'll use 2 different types of payment rails. They'll have multiple subsidiaries where one subsidiary requires certain fields and information to be collected, the others doesn't. Typically, if you have like domestic and international onboarding, you'll know that the fields required there are going to be highly different, especially around payments details, right? With international, you're collecting maybe SWIFT information, SWIFT wire information, but domestic, maybe account and routing numbers. So with that, you can customize what you ask for here in the form. This is just a sample, but you can also see like this is directly applying it to the field IDs and the custom field IDs that live in NetSuite. So you can use custom fields. You can use the kind of default fields and tables that come out of the box with NetSuite. So whatever you need essentially to pipe into your NetSuite vendor records, you can do so here in the setup screen. To also give an example of what this particular form looks like, here's where it's going to come into play. So it's just a single screen. We're not having like multiple kind of subcomponents here. There's no logins, nothing like that required. It does go through email. It's only going to be sent to the email associated to the vendor's account. This actually is also going to be an encrypted link. So only the recipient of the email tied to that email address is going to be able to open that. And so that's for security purposes, and that's so that we don't have to create logins where might result in like lost passwords and back and forth on, hey, I can't get into my portal, etc. So this is just a single screen. Again, you can customize what is asked here and any kind of presentation as well. If you want it to be look a certain way, you can do so. So then you'll go in and submit this form inside of the vendor is going to complete that form. It's then going to come back to your NetSuite record. So it is going to appear in what we've added like a new tab here called Forms. So when you enter into your vendor record, they are going to see forms. And you can see what forms have been published. So how many forms have been sent. This is kind of, you can think of this as an audit log. If you need to kind of follow up for additional, send the form again, or just ask for additional information, you can do so as well inside of this. You can see all active form responses, which today what's going to happen, or when we go live with this dashboard, it's going to appear into kind of the needs review field as well. So when a vendor has completed their information, it is going to flow into this needs review. And so at that point, you need to click in to the vendor and you need to review the active responses that have been submitted by that vendor. We also do validation on things like that is this field formatted correctly, et cetera, to avoid kind of that errors that sometimes happen in the process. So in this case, we can see these are all new fields. This is why they're all appearing as red. We apply and review. That's going to be directed then to your actual NetSuite, your NetSuite vendor record field. It's going to be automatically updated here based on what's here on the left. And then you go and save to the vendor record. Now it is, at this point, it then moves to the last state, which is ready to complete. And once you're in ready to complete stage, then you would just press complete onboarding, review, make sure that all the information is correct. We're going to complete onboarding. And at that stage, we've fully onboarded the vendor. The next stage, if you have approvals, that's also something we do support, highly customized approvals based on, the vendor's country, vendor's address, things of that nature. You can tag into certain vendors, go through certain approval processes based on the subsidiary, et cetera. There is a lot of customization you can do there. But in terms of the next step would be to go through the approval system if you do have that set up. But at that stage, that vendor is onboarded. If you then need to, let's say a year later, submit or ask for a updated W-9 form, a lot of our customers are doing this kind of to keep information up to date and current, then you can do so inside of this process as well by following a similar process, just by resending a form. Maybe it's a lightweight version of just, hey, here's an update form. We're going to ask for W-9 and W-9 only. In that case, you can do so by customizing the form that goes out to that vendor. Key principles here, like again, everything's kind of securely controlled by the form itself. It's really captured inside of that form. There's not going to be any kind of like ability to edit outside of that experience. You know the information that's coming in. You have an audit trail of what comes through, and then that information gets directly applied to your NetSuite record. So there's not any kind of like back and forth or any kind of reconciliation issues that happen there. And then it also ties to kind of the approvals process as well if you want that extra layer of control. So yeah, that concludes the demo we have here today. If you're listening here and you want a preview or want access to this kind of new AVO queue, we're adding bulk actions, like the ability to kind of send these in bulk as part of this as well as some planned updates for the rest of the year. So just let us know on the product team or your customer success manager.
Awesome. Thank you, Marlon.
Sorry about that. Just took a little while to get back.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Well, before we close this out, again, thank you, Marlon, for giving that high-level overview of the vendor onboarding solution offered by Charted. I do want to take a moment just to say that is the very tip of the iceberg. So Charted, here at Charted, we offer a NetSuite-native AP automation solution. So fully end-to-end, of course, kicking things off with our vendor onboarding solution. But as you see through this little chart, we support all areas of the accounts payable process, including invoice ingestion by leveraging OCR technology and along with an AI directions functionality and real-time three-way matching. We provide approval automation, which allows you to leverage an email-based approval. So you do not need additional NetSuite licenses for our approval workflow automation. We offer expense accrual automation as well, helping you predict expenses, reduce those errors, and help speed up your month-end close. And ultimately, capping it all off with inclusive payment automation. So being able to pay your vendors on time and do it correctly is, of course, of most importance. So happy to provide that solution as well. And again, we're the only end-to-end solution that requires no integration, and we're fully optimized to work with NetSuite. I know we had a question, I believe we were monitoring that, who was asking if we are NetSuite-native or if we're built via API. So let this answer that. We are NetSuite-native. We have our Built for NetSuite certification. We are a solution, an SDN partner. So happy to work with you on your NetSuite journey and help automate your full AP process, not just the vendor onboarding piece.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing for me. So we do have an ebook that kind of goes along with a lot of what we presented today, but think of this as a full guide to help you make the most out of NetSuite and help automate the vendor onboarding process. So if you have your phone with you, you can just scan that QR code. You'll get a download of it. And I believe we'll be following up with that as well. So if you are attending and you don't have your phone readily available, we'll have that over to you via email so you can check it out.
Nice. I'll leave this up for about another 10, 15 seconds to give people time. Yeah, I will say, so since you guys are an SDN partner, you're one of the lucky ones who get the early access to NetSuite Next, right? So
yes. And coming soon, there'll be another iteration of the demo as we get ready for NetSuite Next to launch.
Yeah. And now we're going to open the floor up to everybody, all the attendees, to see if there are any questions. It does look like we have one already. I can read it. How do we get our vendors to use the portal? We've tried a portal before, and half our vendors either ignored the invite or called us saying they couldn't figure out the login.
I can take this one. Yeah, I spoke to this a little bit in the demo, but it is worth rehashing. So, and this is one of the reasons why we've gone with our kind of lighter weight, more frictionless approach when it comes to vendor onboarding. We've heard like similar types of sentiments from other customers around vendor portal and just managing another authentication login. We've all had issues maybe with third-party login authentication software, even using like modern things like multi-factor authentication. Like it does get very heavyweight to manage, and just for from an AP standpoint, what we are informed from our customers is that they just prefer a kind of a lighter weight approach. So that's the reason we've gone down that route.
Okay. And look, we do have another one. How does the onboarding form look for vendors?
Yeah, I can share. Well, I did share in the demo as well. We can. I don't know if we can reshare, but maybe we can send out an example of it. Here, let me go ahead and just share that up again.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the example form that we use. It is highly customizable in terms of what you want to ask for to your vendors. In this situation, we are asking like for, hey, do you want to get paid via ACH or check in this in this form? So there's some level of like dynamic fields as well as part of our payments collection piece. But you can upload files like W-9s. You can ask for any kind of open-ended fields as well. You can make fields required and optional as part of this too. Very much encourage folks to make fields required that are truly required and like are needed to onboard that vendor. Whereas it's finding that balance of creating friction or eliminating as much friction as possible while mandating the fields that are required to get paid and ultimately onboarded. So there is kind of a balance there. We do give that optionality to the customers we work with to select that, and we're also happy to help kind of advise what the best approach is.
Okay. Thank you. And another question, we always save the W-9 and bank details as PDF files on our vendor records. where would these documents live with your onboarding solution?
Yep. So, so in terms of, just showed where you upload the W9 PDF file. So it does actually get piped over to your NetSuite vendor record as well. So NetSuite does remain that as that source of truth. And that's really one of the core principles of our solution is we want NetSuite to be that source of truth for you all. So you don't have to kind of reconcile multiple systems. If you need to then look up the W9 later on, or a different member of your team needs to do so, they know where to go in NetSuite, where that information lives.
Nice. We keep getting some good questions, a couple more. When it comes to invoice approval, I know it's an email that's sent out. Will that approval be recorded on the bill record in NetSuite?
Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah, so in terms of our invoice AI solution, the approval is going to be captured on kind of that bill level as well. So that is part of our approval system that we offer. There's a lot of customization in terms of what you can and can't do. I think one of the more common things is, like, for example, bills over a certain amount go through a more comprehensive review process. But that is, yeah, once obviously post vendor onboarding, once the invoices and bills start flowing in, we have that layers on top of it. And then obviously the last step there is payments, which is something we also cover for ACH and check.
Okay. And then one other one, how are COI updates handled to ensure our requirements are met?
This is a good one. So part of kind of the next iteration of AVO is making that process a little bit more streamlined in terms of the information that how fresh a form is. Now, customers today, what they're doing is they're building kind of like saved searches inside of NetSuite to collect basically the last time that the bill was updated or a certain form was updated from the vendor. So that's a common path. We are starting to integrate some of those things inside of our AVO dashboard, which you saw earlier as part of the demo phase, so that like things like how fresh a form is going to be very front and center, and even looking at things like reminders, etc. As part of that, we do have the ability to capture those COIs inside of the AVO solution. We have customers doing this via forms that we either us or them have built out as part of the advanced form builder. But more to come on like actual validation that happens inside of those records and actually looking at forms and things like that. That still does need to be manually done today, but we do give you a lot of the tools to capture that information, make sure it's updated and fresh from your vendors.
Okay. And it looks like we have one more question. It says, we are required to confirm the vendor's banking information by phone or video before creating the vendor. How can we incorporate this into the process?
Yep. So as part of that bill review, or sorry, form review process that we looked at the demo earlier, so customers that do want that extra layer of validation, now typically what they're doing is when they are in the process of reviewing the bill, or sorry, the form that was come back, they will make a phone call to the call on file, or probably the number associated to that vendor inside of NetSuite, and they're going to validate, hey, you've submitted this form, you've submitted this information. However, with that said, we are working on some things on our side to kind of automate the validation side so that you don't necessarily need to call the vendor in most cases, and actually looking at a validation approach that will tie in more pieces of data and help you make a more informed decision when you are onboarding a vendor.
So I think that was it for questions, which is great. I love getting so many great questions here, so I really appreciate it. A very inquisitive and attentive audience, which makes it a lot better for us, right? So with that, I would love to wrap up. I know, please, for everybody attending, If you can hold on after we wrap up here, I think there's like a 1-question survey, which would really help us along. But, Casey and Marlon, thank you very much for joining me today, and everybody out there in the audience. We really appreciate you taking time, knowing how busy everybody's schedules are. So we greatly appreciate it. And thank you and have a great day.